So now we will have our second panel discussion on energy efficiency. It will be around the roadmap to net zero buildings in the MENA region. As we know, several countries in the MENA region have pledged to reach net zero emissions. UAE and Oman have declared their commitment to reach net zero by 2050, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain by 2060. And this panel discussion aims to discuss the roadmap to net zero buildings in the region, focusing on the technical, regulatory, and economic requirements for achieving this goal. I will be now welcoming the panelists to the stage. Please use the stairs over there so you don't have to wait for me here. I would like to welcome Engineer Faisal Rashid, the Senior Director, Demand-Side Management at the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy, Rashid Hamida, Vice President of Energy and Technology at Innova, Dr. Shawki Ghinai, Associate Professor and Sustainable Energy Development Research Group Coordinator at the University of Sharjah, and Mu'taz Abdullah, Head of Project Development at Abu Dhabi Energy Services, ADES. I also welcome the panel moderator, Mustafa Anzi, General Manager of Energy Solutions at Johnson Controls.
Welcome everyone to this panel discussion at the 10th Annual Summit for the Clean Energy Business Council. Several countries in the MENA region have pledged to reach net zero emissions, like also was presented by Majd. The UAE and Oman have declared their commitment to reach net zero by 2050 and Saudi Arabia by 2060. This goal is not without challenges, and achieving it will require significant regulatory, technical, and practical considerations. So this is the background of our panel discussion today. And before moving to the questions, I would like to introduce the panelists. So Mu'taz Abdullah is the Head of Project Development at the Abu Dhabi Energy Services company, ADES. ADES is the super ESCO in Abu Dhabi and is a subsidiary of TAQA Group, an energy services market maker for the Emirate of Abu Dhabi. In his role, Mu'taz is responsible for introducing the super ESCO model as a driver for building retrofit in line with the Abu Dhabi Demand-Side Management and Energy Rationalization Strategy 2030. Mu'taz has a bachelor degree in engineering from the University of Tennessee and a master of engineering degree from the Michigan University. He has earned his CMVP, CM, and CDSM credentials. Rashid Hamida from Innova, he's the Vice President of Energy and Technology. He joined Innova in 2017. And in his role, Rashid is leading the company's sustainability vision, overlooking functions including energy engineering and audit, renewable energy, innovation technology, and Hubgrade, Innova's Smart Monitoring Center. Rashid holds a master degree in intelligent transportation systems from the ENPC Paris and a bachelor degree in civil engineering from ENSTP in France. We have Professor Shawki with us from the University of Sharjah. He's a professor at the Sustainable and Renewable Energy Engineering Department, College of Engineering. At the same time, he is coordinator of the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Research Group, Center for Sustainable Energy and Power Systems at the Research Institute of Science and Engineering. He is also leader of the Energy and Climate Change Circle at the Sustainability Office, and he is the chairman of the Research Funding Department at the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research and Graduate Studies from the University of Sharjah. Dr. Ghinai was listed in 2019, 20, and 21 as world's top 2 scientists in energy. He holds a PhD degree from mechanical engineering from Orleans University in France and a bachelor degree in mechanical engineering from the Constantine University in Algeria. And then we have Mr. Faisal Rashid. He's a frequent speaker and active participant at various local and international energy-related events. He has published numerous articles on energy management and sustainability. Currently, he holds a position as a senior DSM director at the Supreme Council of Energy in Dubai. He has a bachelor degree of science in mechanical engineering from Dayton, Ohio University. So now back to our subject of today, energy efficiency and net zero. The first question is related to building codes and is for Mr. Shouki. Should building codes focus more on building envelope or on the infrastructure side of buildings?
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. It's really a pleasure to be with you for this panel discussion. I think before I answer this question, let me talk a little bit about the clean energy transition and the goal of the strategy to reach the net zero emission by 2050. So this one, so to reach this goal, we need to go through decarbonization of the energy sector. But another key factor for decarbonization is digitalization of the energy sector also and decentralization. This is what we call the 3D energy model. And this should include, if we look for the global energy sector, should include all the sector. Power generation, which is very important also. So we have, since we're talking about energy efficiency, so we have to look for developing more efficient energy system to produce electricity for. So this is for fossil fuel, nuclear, and also for renewable energy system, because some of the renewable energy system, the efficiency is low. If we take, for example, the solar PV, the efficiency is low. So we have to work hard to increase, and we need to do a lot of research to increase the efficiency of the energy sector. The second sector is industrial application, also transportation for vehicles, for marine application, for aviation, and also, of course, residential and commercial sector. So we have to work in all of them at the same time if we want to reach the net zero emission. So now, a clean energy transition is very important because this is a switch from conventional energy system using fossil fuel like coal or natural gas to a cleaner energy system. So the future energy system will be cleaner, it will be sustainable and renewable. Using what? Renewable energy system, energy efficiency, energy conservation, electrification of the energy sector, developing the new alternative fuels, low or zero carbon fuel like hydrogen, ammonia. So this will be also very important, the future energy system. As I said, electrical vehicles, carbon capture and sequestration if we continue to use fossil fuel. So this will include all of them, as I said, if we want to reach the net zero emission. So decarbonization is very important, as I said, through all these strategies. But another key factor for decarbonization, as I said, is digitalization. So digitalization will help a lot for decarbonization of the energy system by using smart meters, by using data analytics, by developing new advanced energy system using this data to improve the efficiency of the system, developing artificial intelligence and machine learning forecasting models to predict the energy consumption, for example, the building. So we want to know ahead, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours ahead, what will be the energy consumption of the building. So this we can achieve it by developing this kind of forecasting models, and also use it for the supply if we use solar PV or wind. So the resources are intermittent, so we need to develop this forecasting models to forecast or to predict ahead that we can balance the supply and the demand. So digitalization, as I said, will play a key role for this one. Blockchain is also very important. Cybersecurity, digital twin technology for the building will be also very important. And the last one is decentralization also, because it will help to improve the efficiency of the energy system, because the production of electricity, if you take the building, you install the solar PV on the roof of the building, so the production of electrical power will be close to the consumption. So this will help to reduce all the losses if compared to take the power from the grid. Now, if we go back to your questions, which one is important, envelope for the building codes or infrastructure using HVAC, LED, and other one, say all of them are important, but the high priority should be energy efficiency. So if energy efficiency is very important, envelope is very important. We have to select the right materials for the walls, for the roofs, to reduce the U values. Okay, so if the U values is high, we have to work hard developing new type of material to reduce the U values. We have to reduce the leakage. We have to improve the circulation of the air inside the buildings. And also reducing the leakage, as I said, the selection of the windows, the location of the windows, what type of windows we have to look. So all of these technologies, the new innovative technology that we use for the envelope will help to reduce the energy consumption of the building. And this is very important. The first step is very important before the integration of the renewable. So this one is the priorities. The second one, yes, the infrastructure with HVAC is very important also, because if you look the building here in UAE, our buildings are consuming 60 to 80% of the energy for the building. So we can get a lot of saving from the building if we focus on the HVAC. So we have to use more efficient HVAC system. We have to develop also control system to control our HVAC system, to develop an optimization method strategy to optimize the operation of the HVAC. So this will help a lot. And of course, we have to include also the lighting. Even the percentage for the electricity consumed for the lighting is about 10–15%, but we have to move to more efficient lighting system. So by going through the reducing the energy consumption of the building, using more efficient system for HVAC lighting appliances, now the next step, we want to integrate the renewable energy. It will help a lot because we are going to reduce the capacity of the solar PV. So we reduce the cost also for the solar PV. But the last integration also for the renewable, we have to develop also we have to develop an optimum operating condition of the solar PV. We have to develop also smart solar system, a new type of solar PV, because the actual technology that we are using with 20% efficiency is not enough.
So basically you're saying that building codes should focus on the envelope as the systems inside the building, with a priority first on the envelope, so to make it as, let's say, high performing as possible, so that, for example, when you install the system inside the building like HVAC, the requirements would be lesser, and then have solar as the final step in that process.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Mr. Faisal Rashid, when it comes to building labeling, will that also help in expediting the net zero building stock, you think?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I'll give a short answer respecting the time. We have in the UAE around 500,000 buildings, and I think they are mostly known, I think not only here, but in the region. These building codes have been, or most of the building basically have been built based on the old code. So I would say that majority of the building are not efficient. That's why I think aggressive, if we talk about existing building, aggressive retrofit program is required. Aggressive means what we call it a deep retrofit, to basically reduce at least 30% of the business as usual consumption. So in this respect, for all, I think, new retrofit project, there should be a minimum, basically, standards looking like to have at least like gold and above. So this will help, making or decarbonize the existing building, which are the key. On top of that, also the new code, I think definitely we're looking at the future building as well. So new building code have to have net zero building feature within them in order to basically connect with the labeling. So I would say energy labeling, make energy efficiency more visible. It enables the key market players like developer, retrofit contractors, architect, designer, supplier, vendors, and also money lenders to work together and to appreciate also the value of energy performance as well as design. Thank you.
And you mentioned the value in terms of value of the property itself, or value of the solutions that are proposed?
No, automatically, when these different or key players work on the labeling, I think working on the kilowatt hour per square meter, looking at the comparison also, whether we're talking about different typology. It could be a shopping mall, could be hotels, could be I think could be small buildings as well. So when they work, I think within, the mathematical calculation of or getting into the outcome of this performance design versus performance, I think they'll become more aware of the importance of efficiency, or what we call energy intensity within, I think, their unit.
Okay, thank you. The same question also for Rashid. You are working for a service provider, so you're there in the field, you talk to end users. Do you feel that a labeling scheme for buildings will create a stimulus for the market towards net zero?
Yeah, thank you, Mustafa. Does it work? Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us with you. It's working, yeah? Okay, thank you. Let's say a recent study has been shown that 85% of greenhouse emission is coming from human activities. And 40% of these activities is coming from buildings, according to 3 phases. The first one is the construction phases with more or less consequent impact. The second one is the commissioning phases with very marginal impact. And the third one is the operation phases along the time cycle life of the buildings, which represent the huge impact on the buildings. So that's the reason why the labeling of the buildings is very important, because it gives somehow some references, and it gives also the threshold and the gap that needs to be recovered for the operating period. Just for example, we took a part of facility management tender recently with the buildings completely new. This building was not yet commissioned, and it was already 3 pearls istidama rated, which means that the threshold of the potential of savings or additional savings that might be down is very challenging. However, it makes the gap shorter to reach net positive or net zero. So in that case, we are also proposing, for example, to be more compliant technologies like it was mentioned by Dr. Shawqi, based on digital twin, on how we can make the twin of the new buildings that don't have yet baseline in order to assess what might be the behavior of the buildings, what might be the gap between the theoretical models of the buildings and the reality. And in that case, we can also, of course, based on this rating, to see what might be the gap in order to make those buildings more sustainable and less energy consuming.
Thank you. So you're saying that even for new buildings, end users tend to want to understand how they're performing or how their buildings are performing, and they also give KPIs to reduce energy efficiency further, even though they already have a 3 pearl rating for them. Okay, thank you. Then we move on to Mu'taz. You mentioned that ADES is a super ESCO, or a market maker between end users and ESCO companies to help them reduce energy efficiency. With the developments towards net zero, how do you see the role of a super ESCO in this equation to support stakeholders in the market towards achieving net zero targets?
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Thank you, Mustafa. So basically, energy efficiency represents a big share of the path and the target towards net zero. And today, without energy efficiency, the net zero targets, if not impossible to achieve, they will be very complex and very expensive without having or giving attention to energy efficiency and specifically within buildings, for example, here when we talk about net zero buildings. So over the years, we have seen the concept of energy efficiency. We've been building greener homes. We have more efficient buildings and more efficient industries. But I think that pace needs to double. We need to focus on some of the areas that have been overlooked and maybe did not have much attention. And specifically here, I'm talking about existing buildings. So existing buildings is a unique concept because there is a lot of complexity when it comes to energy efficiency implementation within existing buildings. The procurement of energy efficiency for solutions for existing building is not an easy task. The solutions are complex. There is always lack of funds, or maybe organizations, when they prioritize their funding, energy efficiency on existing buildings usually is the last, even if it's on the list. The process to implement such solutions require subject matter experts. It requires a detailed process from creating a baseline to developing the solutions, to doing a detailed energy study, let alone the implementation and the transactional cost of the project itself. So all of those challenges were almost created the need for entities to be established to remove these barriers and to solve these problems, allowing these markets to excel. And that was basically the concept of the Super ESCO. The concept of the Super ESCO was established in the late 90s, but then just came to reality after closer to 2010. I believe here in the UAE is the leader. Tehad ESCO was one of the first one, if not the first Super ESCO established. In the region here, of course, we have Tershid, then we have Abu Dhabi Energy Services. The Super ESCO is basically a government or a semi-government entity that is established to act as a facilitator between the building owners and the private sector to ensure the success of those projects. We work on basically developing a streamlined tendering process that allows the implementation of the projects in a faster pace. We basically, or Super ESCOs in general, they basically they provide competitive funding rate, taking off that energy efficiency budget from the government. They have the subject matter experts. They know how to develop it, as I said, tenders, evaluate solutions, and bundle projects in order to reduce the transactional cost and making it cost effective for the client. So with that, the role of the Super ESCO, along with the participant ESCO companies from the market, is crucial, is very important, and is the first step towards implementing those energy efficiency, which could then help organization reach a net zero concept as a secondary plan.
Okay, thank you for elaborating, Mu'taz. Going back to Faisal Rashid, what will be some of the biggest challenges along the way in reaching the UAE's goal for net zero by 2050?
Yeah, I think reaching net zero target is easier said than done, despite I think most of the developed countries made a commitment to reach net zero by 2050, including here in the UAE. We have the local aspect as well. Dubai has basically committed through the resolution. Also, UAE government also made a pledge to work and to reach net zero carbon by 2050. But coming from myself, coming from the oil and gas industry, at the beginning, I worked for a long time in the oil and gas, and I think you know what it means when it comes to carbonization. And then I think now we're working on the other side of the coin to sort of decarbonize, I think, our asset or existing asset. So I would say removing fossil fuel, I think this requires transformational change to remove fossil fuel of every sector of the economy. This means that we need to have a new way of constructing, building city infrastructures, new way of basically manufacturing steel, concrete, aluminum, cement. These materials are heavily dependent on high temperature heating and fossil fuels. So I think it's not easy to basically to switch to a renewable aspect equally. So this will remain a big challenge in terms of constructing these city infrastructures. So moving toward the operational aspect as well, definitely strong building code has to go through transitional period to include net zero features. To reduce basically the intensity or what we call it kilowatt hour per square meter. So this is the key figure that we're looking to achieve, whether it is for new building, whether it is for existing building. Last, I would also say to manufacture building products or material, I think they have to have sort of circular basically aspect within them in order to reduce the burden of using more and more fossil fuel. In terms of solution, I think everybody's talking about is the hydrogen technology, which is not mature at this time, that can come and then tackle the heavy industries like manufacturing, like heavy-duty transport, like aviation and shipping and so on. Yeah.
Thank you. Rashid, the same question also for you, but maybe from a private sector perspective. What challenges do you see along the way to achieve net zero?
I would like to mention three main challenges that comes to me. The first one is the electricity tariff, which is quite low in some particular region or countries in the region. But when you mention, because the wording is very important, when you mention challenge, it means constraints, but opportunities as well. So the fact that the tariff is quite low, this push all the stakeholders, whether is it ESCO companies, field device supplier, new technologies, startup and so on, doing their best in order to pull up all creativities and so on. We've seen, for example, for renewable energy and particular for PV solar plant and PV modules, for example, the decrease of the cost drastically. And this was happened because the project in some region was not enough profitable, and now they are profitable. For example, we've seen in Abu Dhabi a project for PV solar close to 7 years, in rooftop close to 7 years payback, which was not the case 5 or 6 years back. The second challenge is, on my opinion, the carbon trading. It was mentioned on I think it was the presentation of Dr. Rabia, if I'm not mistaken. So she showed us a kind of route or global route of electricity supply. So we know that the carbon trading is based on two approach, let's say. The first one is the compliance, which is established in Europe, for example, and the second one is the volunteering. So maybe we can see in the future a kind of new path, new route of carbon trading worldwide, where the offsetting that might be achieved here in the UAE could offset something else elsewhere. The third challenge, I think, is also the lead time. Even though that now we are seeing clients much more educated in terms of energy efficiency, thanks also to the super ESCO that are playing a huge role to be the trusted third party when it comes to energy efficiency and energy performance contract. But we've seen that the journey from the merging of new opportunity to converted to the conversion of this opportunity is still taking time. We are working, for example, with RSB on the contract template, how we can put in place the right KPIs to save the interest of the clients and so on. I think we need to implement more discussion, more dialogue in order to reduce this lead time from the initiative, the emerging of the initiative until the conversion of the project.
Okay, that's one of the main challenges, the development cycle for this kind of projects. When it comes to technology, Professor Shouqi, you're very much involved in R&D and at the forefront of new innovations and technological solutions. Are there any technologies that should be prioritized in the next couple of years to support us in accelerating the net zero buildings?
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, I think there are so many technologies that can be applied. As we said before, envelope of the building is very important, so we have to develop a new type of green materials that can be used for the building. And we have to check mainly the U values that we are having right now, for example, in UAE, where we are, and we have to set a target to develop a new type of materials that will be used for the building to reduce the energy demand of this building. With respect to the roof also, we have one project right now that we are working on, so I can give you this example because it includes some innovative technology that we are using, not only for the envelope of the building, because what we are using a special coating, white coating on the roof of the building that has more solar reflectance. So it will let less heat going inside the building, so this will help to reduce the energy consumption or the cooling load of the building. But at the same time, this coating, we have to use a new technology for solar. So if we want to integrate renewable energy like solar PV for this building to reach net zero emission, we have to use innovative technology for solar. See what we are using bifacial solar PV. So bifacial solar PV, you can produce power from the front and the back of the solar panel. When the solar radiation will hit the front of the panel, we produce power. But when the solar radiation will hit the roof, there will be more reflecting that will go back to the back of the solar PV. And this will help to boost the production of solar PV. So we can boost it by 20 to 30%. Of course, we have to develop an optimization like a strategy to see what type of coating that may reflect the reflectance from solar PV, the height from the roof, the inclination angles, and also the distance between the panels. So we're doing an optimization, developing optimization method, for example, to boost the production from the solar PV. So using a new technology and by combining this solar PV and this cool roof. And what we are doing also, we are integrating also the production of hydrogen. Okay, so hydrogen can be used, the green hydrogen, we have to use a renewable energy system. So during the day, we can use the power from the bifacial solar PV with the cool roof technology to meet the load of the building. And the extra power, we are using it to split the water in the electrolyzer to produce green hydrogen. And the green hydrogen, we can store it in the tank, and we can use it during the night, for example, using fuel cell. So this one, it will be like a power system that will be 100% renewable. So we're still in the research and development, but this is something that will be used in the future. But this one is mainly, as I said from the beginning, this is decarbonization of the energy sector. But in addition to that, we are putting all the smart sensor for all the system, for the production of the solar PV, for electrolyzer, for the storage system, and for the fuel cell. Because by collecting all this data in real time, so you can use this data to do an optimization of the system. Because you have to find the best operating condition of the system, and this one you can do it from digitalization of the energy sector. And also you include decentralization, because this system, if you use combination of solar PV with the fuel cell, so it will be an off-grid system, so you don't need to take anything from the grid. So this is just an example for innovative technology.
Professor, very, very interesting developments. Almost make you feel going back to college again. But Engineer Faisal, what are the recommendations from your end for the public and private sectors in the MENA region to get ready for net zero?
Yeah, I think it's a joint effort. Usually the government are responsible to write a roadmap, to make a game plan, to create sort of innovative and technology platform, to share, I think, also policy mandate as well. This comes from the government side. And then I think government is responsible to share the plan with the private sectors, so they know where to invest, how to invest, and what is the opportunity for them. So this, I think, trend will definitely support growth in the green job as a whole. Also, it will boost the growth of creating more job in renewable and also in energy efficiencies as well. One good example, if we talk about the supply, side of the energy, I would say the PPP, the model for power purchase, is a good example. I think this is already applied in Emirates of Dubai and Abu Dhabi for the private sector to join government and then build renewable supply side. It will boost the economy also. It will help also from the financial aspect as well. And this, I think, trend has started somewhere in 2013 and continue to happen for all the mega projects, and it's proven to be successful. I also want to mention the supply, the demand side management, I think, is already heavily involved in when it comes to partnership between private and also public sectors. You can see the partnership exists already in building retrofit. The whole model is basically based on involvement of the retrofit contractor, the developer, the building owners as well. And this is not only limited to, I would say, to sale and contract services only, also include manufacturing of efficient devices, manufacturing of electric vehicles, and all these aspects. So a lot are expected from the private sector when it comes to green economy.
Thank you, Engineer Faisal. So, Mu'taz, Engineer Faisal mentioned a roadmap for the private sector, public-private partnerships. Do you see any commitment in the private sector when it comes to net zero goals?
Well, first of all, when we talk about the private sector, in general, private sector organizations are motivated by the need to minimize cost and boost profitability. That's in general. On the other hand, they do have their environmental, social responsibilities, and many have energy efficiency and net zero targets, and that's great. But if we look globally, and I've just looked recently, there was a study by Accenture showing that by the end of 2022, there is 33% of the largest companies have already planned to they have committed to net zero targets almost by between 2040 and 2060. However, 93 of those companies will fail to deliver on these targets. Of course, and again, the challenges here, as mentioned earlier by my colleague Rashid here, some of it could be related to the cost of energy, but again, you have the economic downturns, and I think what we see now is this is the time to learn. This is the time to have ambitious targets, work hard towards them, and if you fail, that is okay. And then you will have to reset your targets to a more realistic targets. This is the decade to learn, because in the future, I believe it's not going to be an option. Having commitments is not going to be an option, and delivering on those commitments is not an option. Yeah. But if we look locally here in the local market, I believe that yes, there is a lot of participation as well. Just to name a few, I believe that Aldar and MAF have their net zero targets. They have initial targets for 2030. They have the 2050 as well, and many, many other organizations. So the commitment is there. We do see that participation. However, as I said, there is going to always to be the challenges, and this is the phase to learn before it is too late.
Well, interesting point. So you're saying that there are ambitions. So private companies have the ambition to become net zero, but through changing market conditions, sometimes the priorities shift up and down on their list.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, COVID, for example, I'm sure it had an impact on those big, largest companies because they had their 2050 plans prior to COVID, and that was a reason maybe for that for them to reset. But let's look at another angle. I think there was recent studies that shows that there are more people now are willing to pay more for sustainable products than years ago. Just if we go around this room and we ask people, what was your opinion 10, 15 years ago? What is your opinion today? I'm sure that we will have some willingness that some people are willing to pay more for sustainable, environment-friendly products than earlier. This and that increase of consumers who are willing to pay more will help private sector organizations bridge the gap. And over time, I'm sure we're going to reach to the 90 and 100%, and almost everyone is willing to do that, not forced to do it.
So do you think we would need a new business model for achieving net zero? So transferring the risk of achieving net zero to another player, to a super ESCO or another party, because like you said, priorities for companies change based on market dynamics, etc. But if you involve a third party to, for example, deliver a service, a net zero service for your building, taking the risk of the energy savings, renewables, air carbon credits, would that be a new business model that can work in this market for Rashid and for you, Marta, both? Because from Rashid from the service provider side and you from the super ESCO side.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for me, as a super ESCO, I don't see the need to change the super ESCO model today. Yeah, because usually super ESCOs are driving a building retrofit program, which is part of a demand side management strategy, which is again part of a bigger net zero plan. Yeah, so we're already there. We're part of the model partially. But as we move forward, should new requirements, client requirements arise that requires that achieving a net zero building target is part of the package, part of an energy efficiency package, then I think the super ESCO model and the ESCO model is very flexible, and we'll be happy to adapt such requirements. And as a super ESCO, we can certainly make sure that the ESCOs are prepared for this, and this is part of our tendering package. So that there is always a flexibility when it comes to that.
Okay, thank you. Rashid, are you prepared for this?
Yeah, sure. So I'm 100% agree with engineer Mohandes Martez. I do believe that for the time being, the business model is very clear, is well known by all the stakeholders. We know the ESCO model with the super ESCOs, landscape, and ESCOs. On some particular private sector, we know that we have performance-based contract, shared-saving project contract. On renewable energy is the same. We have the ownership model. We have the PPA model. There are also some particular regions, such as Jordan previously, and in Turkey right now, we have the Willings model. As Enova and among other companies, we are also working on cooling as a services model. We can put on the top of that the green cooling also. We are working in this topic. So I think that there is multiple possibilities. On my opinion, the right question that needs to be asked now is, first of all, to go step back and to ask the questions, what should be the right framework to assess those business models right now, to make sure that those models are fitting well the needs, the partners, and so on. And to tackle these questions, I would suggest 3 pillars. The first one is the input. The input in terms of the key players in this market, in terms of the means, which means goods, resources, skills. We are seeing, for example, now more and more skills needed when it comes to data analysis, machine learning, and so on. Those skills was not, at the beginning, was not engaged, was not involved in this business. The second pillar is the value creation. What's the cost structure? What's the revenue streams? What's the job creation, quality of job creation around? And the last and not least pillars is the value distribution, or how we can put in place the right business model, or assess the current business model to make sure that those projects are profitable for all the stakeholders.
Thank you, Rashid. So also for the sake of time, 2 more questions, one for Professor Shawki and one for Engineer Faisal. How can universities contribute to accelerating net zero buildings? And then the last question for Engineer Faisal, what kind of policies would you recommend to accelerate net zero buildings? Let's go ahead, Professor.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think, I believe to reach the target or the goals for the net zero emission by 2050, or to move to accelerate or boost this clean energy transition, we need a quadruple helix collaboration between the governments, industry, higher education institution, and also the community. Community also should be involved because we need acceptance of this new technologies, I think, in the markets. With respect to the higher education institution, yes, it's very important because we have, for example, industry board. We meet with them twice a year to get their feedback, because our program can be adapted based on the need of the market or the need from the industry and the governments. So this is very important because the university will produce the future workforce needed to tackle all these challenges that we have with the net zero emission and to reduce the greenhouse gas emission. We need also for research, in addition to educational program, research and development. This is very important. We need to enhance the collaboration between university, industry, and governments. Okay, so this will help to develop a new technology needed to reach these goals. So the university, so we provide some, I'm sharing the research funding department, so we provide some internal funding to the faculty, to the researcher, but we need also to enhance the external funding, collaboration with industry that will help to develop new technologies. And we have also technology transfer department at the university. Not only we do research, but we'll take the best idea from the university to take them for patenting and for commercialization. Because at the end, the goal is to develop a new product that will serve the communities. So that means, yes, the university will play a crucial role in the future for developing this kind of technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Engineer Rashid, final policy recommendations from you for accelerating net zero emission buildings.
Yeah, I think the key, the starting point is for a country to have a target setting for both supply and demand side management. And then I think different programs have to be defined, responsibility matrix as well. Different players have to basically deliver different scope as well. And then on top of that, also this roadmap or this strategy has to have an activation process in terms of monitoring and verifying and reporting to the decision makers as well. And then also intervening if there is a pickup in terms of acceleration, if there is an intervention, if there is a way to improve, to update the strategy also. There should be way, a provision also to interfere and then make a change. I would say most of the developed countries who have signed, who have agreed on Paris Agreement are pursuing their business as usual strategy on the horizon of 2030, expecting that they'll be more aggressive beyond 2030 when some of the technology pick up, like I would say, especially on the supply side, like carbon capture, like hydrogen technology, like energy storage. This is, I think, the picture of how the net zero trend is happening to follow business, to follow the current 2030 strategy and then to accelerate beyond, whether you agree or disagree, but this is mostly it goes, this is how it's being applied. And then beyond 2030, I think most of the country plan to be more aggressive to reach 2030. But the key point, I think, for any country or city who hasn't started, I think it will be very difficult to catch, I think, or to reach half of the target even.
Thank you, Engineer Faisal, for the concluding policy recommendations. Do we have any time left for some questions? Or if there are any questions, yeah?
Is this working? Yeah. Hello? Yes, I wanted to thank the panel because energy efficiency is a critical area. If we compare energy efficiency in our region compared to OECD or developed countries, on average we use twice as much energy to produce a unit of GDP as advanced economies OECD. So reducing energy, increasing energy efficiency is a critical area, and thank you for pointing that out. I have two questions. It was pointed out by Engineer Faisal that retrofitting is very important, and of course it is. When we put in new building standards, it applies to new buildings being constructed. But the stock that you have of old buildings is the critical bit. What you add to the stock annually is maybe 2 to 3%. You need to deal with 95 to 97%. So question number one, how do we accelerate retrofitting? What sort of incentives can you provide? And what is the best way to do so? Number two, we talk a lot about credits, carbon credits and all the rest. But that can only be effective if you have carbon taxes. From an economic point of view, you've got to do something that was pointed out by Rashid about electricity tariffs. We encourage people to use a lot of energy. We sit in this room and it's maybe at 19 degrees. We can survive quite well if it's at 22 degrees. Those 2 to 3 degrees can make all the difference to energy efficiency and energy use. So if I look at the international studies, IMF, World Bank, and all the others, they're telling us not only should you be removing subsidies such as electricity tariffs and others, but you should be imposing a carbon tax, a minimum carbon tax of at least $20 to $30 per ton, and maybe going up to 70. So can I have your views of those two issues? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question, Mr. Nasser. Excellent question. I'll take the first part. I think with regard to incentive to decarbonize, I think, existing building, I think this could be debated, but I think what we have adopted in Dubai is that money grant or subsidy never worked. It has maybe limitation. I think a country can start with some sort of grant and then at some point it will maybe affect the market to go once this is stopped. But I think the key incentive is the short payback period and also the green fund. If there is, I think, if there is an enabler, like a green fund to support these or this retrofit market, because when we talk about retrofit market, usually we start with we start piloting public building, government building, to basically boost the market, to increase the accreditation of ESCO market as well. And then this way, I think we move from pilot to big scale project, to include commercial building, to include residential building, and so on. And when we also in Dubai set a target of 30,000 building by 2030, we looked at the benchmark that what we have today is around 130,000 building. And then there are some existing buildings are beyond retrofit or beyond repair even. So that takes us to coming up with this number, which is 30,000 by 2030. And I take your point also. I think looking at the new building by 2030 will have more existing building, because new building will become also existing building. And definitely there are other solutions as well, and we cannot cover it within this short time.
If I may just add to that as well, in Abu Dhabi, just to give you an example of a program that I'm not part of, but it's being run by a sister organization. There is a rebate program for efficient AC. You know, this is by ADDC. So that's basically we start somewhere. But in terms of incentives or major incentives for building retrofit directly, those are, I mean, I'm sure things are evolving. 10 years ago, or by 2010, no one understand in the market. In general, a lot of people knew nothing about the ESCO and the building retrofit sector. And I don't think we had, maybe we had barely 1 or 2 operating ESCO in the country. Today, we're probably looking at 25 to 30. I think comparing UAE to neighboring countries and even to some of the developed countries, we feel that I think we are in a good place. There has been a lot of progress, and there's probably more to come.
Just one,
Sure,
to complement the point. I think in the nearest future, the carbon or the trade carbon is going to be a kind of commodity. It's obvious. Of course, it's not globally as compliance perspective, but I guess it's become like that. The second point, I'm like you, Dr. Saidi, I'm frozen in this building. That the reason that I'm thinking that by embedding the energy management within the facility management, this is something mandatory. And we've seen since the 2 past years that the weight of sustainability on the FM tender, which is a well-organized market and industry, is taking more and more importance. Before it was like kind of nice to have, but now it's a strong commitment. It's very significant selection criteria based on all the tenders that we've seen across the region related to the facility management.
Thank you, gentlemen, for the interesting insights. I think there was one more question. Omar, you had a question? And if there are other attendees with questions.
Omar from Schneider Electric. I have a question to Mr. Mu'taz. You mentioned an interesting study, which is also concerning, that a huge number of organizations and companies have commitment to achieve net zero by 2030, 2040, but 92% will fail. So what are the other 8% of these organizations are doing right that they will achieve this goal?
Well, if I look at it, I'm sure those organizations probably have spent more. They've had more commitment, more resources, and maybe they. I'm talking here about an assumptions because we didn't look into the study in details, but I'm assuming maybe they were in a better financial position to allocate funds towards these targets. Maybe they managed to survive better throughout the COVID, period. So this is just an assumption, but for anyone to be successful, that means they have done, a little bit extra than the others, above average, and that's what probably made them successful. But maybe we can look into that research separately. I'll point it out to you to look into more details. Thank you for the question.
And sometimes we are seeing like glass ceiling, like virtual barrier. For example, the finance. I remember when I joined this region, the question of what are the barriers that needs to be removed and so on, and we said finance. But now finance is not a problem anymore. We have developer, we have a green fund, we have a lot of organizations that can finance. So sometimes some organizations, they are asking the wrong questions, so they will not reach any target in that case. There is also the issue in terms of alignment. For example, we've seen on some organizations, they have several initiatives. All the initiatives are worth to be conducted, but not aligned. I think some organizations, especially the big corporate organization, they need, and it works for them to establish a proper sustainability master plan and to align all their internal stakeholders as well as the external one.
I think that to the point you made, gentlemen, we see in the market also now that a lot of companies or entities are looking for sustainability professionals. So actually putting the responsibility with a subject matter expert rather than, like you said, having an expert over maybe different departments or different initiatives, but having one driver for sustainability, I think that also can help to a successful end result.
I have a... Yeah, hello. Can you hear me? Okay. So first of all, thank you very much. It was really enlightening, a lot of quality of discussion, so heartfelt gratitude. I have a couple of points. First is, all the retrofit projects that are there, there's going to be a lot of refrigerant which is currently there, the old refrigerant CFC, HCFC. I think perhaps it's a time for us to think about having codes how to handle this refrigerant, because it has got, it should not be just vented out and in the process another 30% goes out, with old refrigerant. So there's a need, I believe, for codes on handling and how to handle this existing refrigerant. So any thoughts on that? And the second thing is even the competence of the technicians that are over here. Okay, so this is a very unique place wherein, we have expats coming in with different degrees, different levels of competence. I think there is perhaps a need for getting some international training programs which can kind of level play. There are existing training programs so globally like NATE certification and all, so bring into the broader industry and ensure that that it's not just about design and installation. During the life cycle, the entire thing is installed, handled, and operated and maintained. So that's the second comment. And third is, finally we are talking about lowest possible carbon impact. So there should be some kind of a program to motivate and incentivize suppliers to invest in these regions so that, we have the net impact is quite positive. So, yeah.
Thank you for your feedback. Anyone wants to take on the response on?
I think regarding the first point, I think it's an excellent approach, initiative, but we don't have it in our region, which is basically exchanging or returning back existing devices. I think this exists in some countries, but is yet to happen here. Definitely, I think if such initiative see some sort of life here in our region, I think it will increase the penetration of more efficient devices to be installed in I think in the residential and also commercial building. So I think that's my opinion.
Maybe I can just add the part about the international collaboration. I think for, just give the example of University of Sharjah, we have a lot of international educational program at the university with respect to renewable energy. For research, yes, we are collaborating with different teams all over the world, I think, for the research and development. But I think, yes, I agree with you. I think we need to organize also some maybe workshop related to especially net zero building and net zero emission, I think, to enhance this type of program.
Thank you. Nothing to add from my side. R22, for example, as a refrigerant has been phased out in many countries, many regions, and new environmental friendly refrigerants have been introduced. At the same time, still we need to ensure that it doesn't get released into the atmosphere. Maybe it's an opportunity to kind of develop a system where these refrigerants can be actually reused or will find another purpose rather than releasing it in the atmosphere. Okay, Mohammed? No? Okay, thank you everyone.
Thank you so much to the panelists and the moderator for your insights.